personally, because you said earlier, what is it that makes some people able to join in? To me, it's hospitality. Every time, and I know you've written about this, that where you go somewhere and someone does the modest amount of stuff to make you feel like you're a human being and vaguely welcome, everything changes. Where you go in and you don't get a nod, you don't get spat at, you don't get excluded, but inclusion is a positive word, isn't it? It is in my community world. To be included means you've got to feel included, and that means a pre-bit. That means someone's got to include you, somehow. No, not a big deal, because it's a bit frightening suddenly to be put on the show, isn't it? But that, and also I now know that is the single strongest theme from all the places we've visited, where you ask people, how is it you managed to get involved? It was Sid or Jenny or Sally who did something. And repeatedly did it, and often had to do it 2 or 3 times, because some people really do take a lot of leading in. And without that, almost every time we were looking at a dwindling clique of people. Not that I'm saying that's not valuable, not in any sense, because that's great. Good God help us. But if I, as I'm trying to do now, to understand some of the patterns we've seen, that's definitely the most prevalent one, where there isn't hospitality. There is a definite correlation between that and a dwindling, ever tighter circle. And in a way, I mean, that's what you'd expect, wouldn't you? Because that's the way the world works. But is that what those people want? No, because they're also the ones that will say, I wonder why people don't turn up these days. Or So that's the kind of slightly weird bit, isn't it? So I mean, the other thing that shouldn't be underestimated is just the fun side. It is just the most amazing amount of fun to find yourself in a session with like-minded people you've never met before, and to find that humanity gives you something in common, and the love of the music. So I mean, so what are you going to do then? How are you going to bring this all together? It's now fallen to you.
So it only started a few weeks ago. Just a new researcher just started yesterday, so we're kind of just putting things together. But it's difficult. So I suppose what we're trying to do is capture what the existing people, so like the people that you're talking to, and what their experience is, what they like about it, how they got in, how it works, why it works, what's going on, and then look at people who don't have anything to do with it, but that we think could be interested. So I'm not trying to convert everybody in the country for a love of folk music, but those people sort of just like a couple of steps beyond the circle, but not just the same people, because it is always friends of friends and things, and so you end up like this. So it's people that might have an interest in heritage, an interest in exploring English heritage, they might have a love of singing, so it's not just friends of friends, but people like one step from their current interests where they already are. So trying to find those people for a start, and see if they'll talk to us, and just see what their existing ideas about the music are, why they like this kind of singing, but they've never even tried that, or if they did try it, what their experience was and why they haven't tried it again. So I'm really looking forward to that research, because most of the stuff I've written before, I've known it before. Sometimes I've thought a bit harder about it and teased it out and understood it better, but it's all really familiar. Like you say, when you live in it, you know. But that stuff is completely alien to me. I don't know what it's like to not know folk music. So to actually do a bit of work in that, and I think that is part of the problem with a lot of the research. Like you say, it's people that were already enthusiasts looking at what's amazing about it, because we know it's amazing, and there's very little about what other people think about it or why.
That's not negative. I mean, because of course there's the cliches, aren't there, that we live with every day, that people think it's about people waving hankies and singing about old Nelly who's been long dead. We know that there is the trouble. I mean, I wish there wasn't a perception.
Waving hankies is brilliant, and I'm always thinking about dead people, but it's about how to change the perception of it, or why that's wrong, or it's interesting, little anecdotal stories. A friend was saying that suggested a a friend of theirs or a neighbour took their food van to a festival, and he was a Pakistani bloke, and he's like, I'm not going there. Jesus, like, I'm alive, you know. And they're like, what, to a folk festival? It's like, yeah, you know, just assuming it was all very nationalist and
jeez, wow,
yeah. So you just can't, you don't know what other people think. So I think even if it is negative stuff, actually getting what that is first and knowing what's going on for people, then we can start trying to address it. Yeah, so the first year really is trying to get some of that, where are we now? And then the next couple of years, I'm going to do sort of action research things. So sort of trying to help people try new stuff out. So different kinds of events or different ways of marketing for an existing event, or putting stuff in different venues or with different people. So not just funding it, because then when the funding runs out, you've got nothing left. So it's all so subtle, isn't it? Like the ecosystem of the folk scene. But you can't just expect people to just voluntarily take these kinds of risks as well. So there will be some money around, but we'll be trying to make it sustainable rather than just
I think that's
fly in, throw loads of money, and then Fay Hield fucks off again. You know. And sort of, so to keep that going for a couple of years and just see what happens, what sticks, what doesn't work. And hopefully by the end of it, I'll have some things to write about, and there'll be some things happening with different kinds of people. So that's the broad idea. Trying to underpin it all with the kind of diversity, EDI principles stuff.
Sure.
It's so easy for me to just stick with the lens that I know. So we're just about to put something out about consulting groups to try and get people who are interested in the sort of 6 main areas I've funneled it down to, of sort of sex and gender, race, disabilities, socioeconomic or class backgrounds, political or religious belief systems, and one more, age. I haven't done age.
It has to be. So
to just make sure that everything we do, we kind of just check ourselves with those lenses and make sure we're aware of what we're missing out on, or whatever, at least.
That's, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, hardly surprisingly, that's kind of, you know, the list that fascinates us as well, you know. And I guess I mean, I suppose my own life has been, my musical life has been like real cross section. So for a long time I was in a kind of world music band, and then I play a lot of jazz, and a lot of the events we run are eclectic to the point of no, just eclectic, really, to the point of being eclectic, you know, where the community bit is the thing that blends into the folk thing. So it's comfortable for people in the very traditional unaccompanied singing to do something, as it is for someone to whip out their kora and do something really great, which incidentally has become in the last few years almost mainstream, isn't it, in the folk world, which is, I mean, how cool is that? It's lovely, isn't it? And I guess, again, that's what we see when we go around the country, that where the musicians have an eclectic view of what they think community music making is, and where they draw their influences from, and what they then put out, is also, seems to me, to be key to closing that other great debate, you know, which probably you're just going to try and ignore, because I know you tried to write it about a million times. You know, what is folk music, isn't it? You know, it's kind of you know, but in itself, of course, it's a fascinating world, because if we don't start calling it community music, which would then completely piss off me and other people, because you're denying us a whole relevance and consigning us even further to a sort of historical dumping ground. There will always be this kind of issue outside of the folk circuit. So the other thing, of course, that we see around the country is the word acoustic being used more than the word folk. And the word acoustic, you know, draws people in because their expectation is broader than the word folk, which is ridiculous factually. It's factually ridiculous, but has an effect. You know,
behavior, isn't it? At the end of the day, that's the only it's the only interesting thing. You know, if creating a perfect model that nobody works in is pointless. Yeah, no, it is really interesting, and who gets to choose what folk is and whether, because I think in lots of ways the folk bit is completely pointless, but then and with you, like on a really visceral level, it's just about people making music together. That's the stuff that I really love. But there is something about Englishness, and it being those people making their music together. So it doesn't need to be old English, you know. It doesn't need to be. I'm not doing any kind of purism thing at all, because you've got to talk about it so carefully, don't you? But that does seem important to people, especially in the kind of Brexit and Black Lives Matter thing. Like you're not allowed to be proud to feel like, you can't let yourself feel proud to be English, because you have all these connotations, and that's in such a weird place to be as a nation, you know. And so partly it makes sense for me to sort of peel all that stuff out, but then partly I'm a bit like, no, we don't need to do that. We need to actually look at this, address it, get the bullet out and let it heal properly, rather than just kind of going, oh, we don't talk about that. We don't really have our folk music because we're not doing English, we're just making music together. So so I kind of keep coming back to it, rather than it just being a project about social singing or community singing.
That's great, isn't it? I love
about heritage and stuff, I think. Don't know.
Do you know James Bell down in Oxford? Have you come across James? So he runs the Bastard English session. I love it. So he's one of the interviews we got on the web, and the very fact that they call it the Bastard English session just tells you probably everything you need to know, doesn't it? It's a bit like, you know, Folk the Patriarch up your end with some of my colleagues up there. It tells you everything you need to know, and they run a completely raucous anything goes session, but with a heart of trad English in it. It's just wonderful, really. And I mean, people are all kind of 35ish and younger, with, you know, oldies just cropping up as well, which is nice. So I mean, it's a great example, and James, if you don't know him, would be just a great guy to talk to. You know, he's involved in booking artists for the Oxford Festival and all sorts. So his kind of view is a bit like ours. He's got every angle covered, but his determination to do that English thing is just it's fantastic. It's just so cool, you know, and completely in your face and rude and sort of, you know, slightly angry, but terribly funny at the same time. You know, it's
get a lot of that in Oxford.
Oxford, that's right.
Behaving, don't they?
Bold.
They can be bolshy.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah, but I guess it's true, isn't it, that taking the music out of its left-wing orientation. Well, no, I suppose you've got to be accurate. Taking what a lot of us have found in the music to be a left-wing sort of influence and a left-wing celebration, and in fact a left-wing canon in a lot of the music that we sing, has also been fascinating for me, particularly because I went up to Beverley and the folk club was in the Conservative club. And you know, here's me thinking I'm Mr. Broad-minded, you know what I mean?
I reckon it's the same. It's very strange, and and it's not just in the Conservative club. You know, a lot of the people are comfortable there. You know?
Right,
so
exactly.
Like,
and here's the thing: the Conservative club was one of the most hospitable places you could possibly go in, and that's just the bar staff. You know, so you know, there's also that kind of strange hangover from a kind of right-wing musical superiority sort of classical tradition, I suppose, if you're going to lump it all together with something that kind of meets the left-wing thing coming down. And it's not, I found sometimes it feels awkward. It didn't feel awkward in Beverley, where of course, the thing I loved is they're singing songs about, you know, kick out the bosses and up the miners, you know, in a Tory club. I loved it in Beverley, for Christ's sake. You know,
that's the strange thing, because there isn't anything. Well, the songs can be political in themselves, but it's how and where they're sung and who's singing them and how they're viewed now, and like repertoire shift over the centuries. So there's nothing inherently leftist about folk music as a concept, in my view. You know, it's just that the 60s and 70s was grown from that political generation.
I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. And I suppose, you know, a kind of, you know, a generation like mine who needed the music to effectively be the soundtrack of what we were learning and what we were trying to do. So the whole kind of rock against
beat the
racism
man,
thing,
get out of the system.
That's right, isn't it? Whereas now, I guess, the sort of genteel older age kind of position that me and a lot of the traditional grey-haired folkies, of which there's still a lot of us about, so our research has totally proven, that I can go into a pub anywhere and people think I'm someone else, which is, that says a lot, doesn't it? They go, Dave, Dave, I've not seen you for ages. No, I've never been here before, honestly. I just look like all your friends. I appreciate that, Yeah, and it's interesting that demographic, it would be lovely to shift that. It's not quite so prevalent in a lot of clubs we've been to, and it's definitely not prevalent on the festival scene, which is cool. But within the sort of just turn up and go to the pub, apart from James's place and about 10 others that we've been to, which deliberately took that thing that's been written about a bit recently about the younger generation's so-called responsibility to get into organising things. Oh, no. It's an interesting theme, that one, isn't it? And I suspect it's one of the things that will come up, because the one thing missing from your list that was on ours was logistics. It's about who actually takes responsibility for organising these things, because that's such a powerful influence. Everything stems from that. Your group of friends, your leanings, your geography, your repertoire, everything stems from who is it that's taking up the door key.
And who has the power. And that's so controversial in folk music, that is portraying itself as it's an open session, anyone can join in, but somebody chose the Conservative Club, or somebody chose this, they're kind of trying to pretend there's no power structure. Brocken's all over that. Yes, it's fascinating. So anyway, I'm just thinking, because I can just talk forever and ever now. So something that we've been thinking about is, because there's so many voices out there and I don't know quite how to pull everything together, but one way, so I've got these consulting groups, so I'll send you that if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Share it around if anybody is interested to join those. Voices will be brilliant. But I'm also wondering about starting some kind of network of people, just interested people, so not tied specifically to those issues, because I get that that's just going to be particular people with particular passions, but kind of just people who are interested in, like you said, that triangle kind of thing, people that are interested in thinking about it, not just the doing, or hopefully not just the moaning about it, but the actually constructive not just shouting. So I don't know.
That'd be cool. You can see that totally dovetails into what I was hoping to bleed your brains about who is it we should be talking to, and what group should we be getting involved in now that we're at the more at the thinking stage. It's not that we're going to stop. Why would you? Because it's just great fun meeting everybody. But I think by now, we always, when we reach 100, although it's meaningless, you can then say 9 out of 10 cats, can't you? You can sort of say 93 out of 100 places, blah, blah.
You've said this a few times about, it's not proper research, or it's not this or that. The one thing that makes it not research that I could have done is the level of ethics consent forms and the kind of university layers on that, which is just bureaucratic nonsense, because I'm sure it's very ethical what you've done, but I wouldn't be able to use it because it hasn't got all those permissions and things.
No, absolutely not. No, and I suppose
the way you do it, or this oral data is, you can do a really deep study of one person. It doesn't have to be, it's not the same as sort of quantitative, we really only talk to 300 people, as long as you're not making claims that are bigger than.
No, that's the point, isn't it?
You're honest about what you've got, you can say anything. So that's I guess the network is try and put people together and try and support people to write stuff and get stuff, and sort of acts a bit of a hub maybe to bring those things together.
And a bit of direction. We thought it would be just we could just carry on doing the same forever, really. Why not? It's still good fun. But on the other hand, we are aware, because some of the people we've met and some of the folks who are trying to write stuff about things, that we could start sort of even geographically, we could start honing what we do, where we've got a plan, obviously, to get out west a bit more, because it's just a bit far away, and we don't tend to get down there for any other reason than would be very happy to you know, sort of head off in a different direction or do something more useful or whatever. So I mean, you can bear that in
We're
mind
thinking
as
of
well.
doing getting guerrilla researchers in, is what we're
Ooh,
currently
yeah,
calling
nice.
them. So
I'd
basically
like it.
like what you're talking about. But so for those trying to catch people that aren't already involved,
Yeah.
instead of me and the other RA just doing a million interviews, just trying to say, okay, who's out there? Who do you know who isn't interested in folk singing, but that you think could be, and just sit down in a pub, have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
We'd write some kind of interview schedule and a bit of interview training. But I mean, you lot will already know all this, but crucially, we'll have the form that they could sign, and then all that data. Different people, you know, we could use it, but other people can use it. And then I'm thinking it'd be really nice to encourage and support the people that are doing the research to write papers from it as well, or you know, they don't all have to be peer-reviewed academic papers. We can just put short
just stuff that keeps
points of view. So I've looked at these 10 and this is something I think is interesting, and could be kind of an interesting gang. So yeah, you sound like a really brilliant person to be part of that.
You know, I mean, entirely selfishly, we'd love to feel that there was a bigger sort of dialogue going on, because it's just nice, isn't it, to think that there's other people sharing the same interests, you know, and taking them seriously.
And if people are interested in what we're doing, they're definitely going to be interested in your interviews as well. So yeah, we should definitely link up and at least have links to the different things that are going on. Other people to find, but then we should have some connections as well. Good.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to go, I'm afraid. I've got
that's great. Brilliant.
But,
Wonderful.
I'll put you on this list to send out the consulting groups.
Brilliant.
And then I'm going to try and get the network going soon. And then that's actually people talking to each other rather than me just with endless spreadsheets and lists. But no, it's brilliant. Sounds amazing what you're doing.
Thanks, Fay. And ditto. I mean, and great timing, really, because you know, I think you only heard about it in September, didn't you? So it is literally the first early days of getting going, which is just brilliant.
Yeah. Seems to be flying by, but it's good. It's still
good. I'll do an edit of this for our own purposes, but then I'll send it to you first, and if there's anything you don't like, we'll scrub it and start again. But
great.
If that feel good.
That I was being recorded, so I didn't think about that. But yeah, lovely. All right.
Thanks, Fay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.